The heart monitor's beeping slowed to a rhythm that felt like the tolling of a funeral bell. Durimos 13 minutes until midnight. 13 minutes until Dr. Nathan Cole would face a choice no veterinarian ever wants to make. Shadow, the German shepherd, lay unmoving in the cold metal cage, ribs showing beneath his matted black and tan fur. His shallow breaths barely stirred the straw beneath him. 4 years old and already so close to death. Emma, sweetheart, we need to go. Sarah Miller's voice quivered as she reached for her daughter's wheelchair. No. Emma's small hands clenched the metal bars. Just a little longer. Nathan's hand shook as he held the syringe, a tube of pink fluid, the grim instrument of finality. 30 years as a vet, and the weight of this moment never grew lighter. Maggie Foster stood in the doorway, her 68-year-old frame radiating quiet determination. She said nothing, just watched. The seconds ticked by, each one heavier than the last. Shadow's ears twitched at a whisper. Emma's soft words reached him, and in that frozen moment, everything hung in the balance. The next 60 seconds could shatter 4 lives, or save them. 3 weeks earlier, Emma had sat at her bedroom window, snow falling silently outside, counting the losses she already carried. 3 years had passed since the accident that stole her legs. That same day, her father disappeared too, though her mother said he'd left. Friends avoided her. Even other children didn't know how to treat the girl in the wheelchair. Hope had been a slow death for Emma, dying inch by inch, leaving her only with memories she shouldn't have had at 8 years old. The house she and her mother rented was small, subsidized, perched on the edge of Pine Ridge, Montana. Days passed with homeschooling at the kitchen table, physical therapy that never helped, and documentaries showing animals that could run, running the one thing she desperately wanted. Night after night, the same dream haunted her. She'd stand, she'd walk, then fall. Faceless man behind a steering wheel reached for her, impact, screaming, and she woke tangled in her sheets, gasping. Her mother never spoke of that day, never of him. Sarah Miller worked 2 jobs to keep them alive, a nurse by day, a waitress by night, returning home smelling of antiseptic and bacon grease. Dark circles under eyes makeup could never hide. Emma sometimes heard her mother crying late at night. Medical bills loomed, $47,000 deep. The eviction notice arrived that week, 30 days to pay or leave. Sarah hid it in her purse. Emma found it anyway. They were drowning, and she felt responsible. Haven's Rest Animal Sanctuary lay on 15 acres just outside town. A red barn and white farmhouse framed against snow-draped hills. Its sign read simply, "For the ones nobody else wants." Margaret Maggie Foster had run the sanctuary alone for 3 years, silver hair tied back in a practical bun, hands roughened by decades of work. Her office was cluttered with files, photographs, and memories of lives saved and lost. One photo sat face down on her desk. Visitors never saw it. Townsfolk whispered that she was a woman who never gave up. They didn't know what she was really searching for. To Nathan Cole, Maggie sometimes stared out the window, eyes fixed on something distant. When he asked what she saw, she'd whisper, "Ghosts." Emma wasn't supposed to hear the phone call. She had been in her room, door ajar, as Sarah spoke quietly with someone from social services. "I know she needs something to look forward to. I'm trying." "The therapy dog programs. I understand the benefits, but the cost." A long pause. "No, we can't afford that either. I'm doing the best I can." Emma stayed still in her wheelchair, hands gripping the armrests. A therapy dog. Something alive that might need her as much as she needed it, something that wouldn't pity her, was a possibility. After her mother hung up, Emma opened her laptop and scoured every shelter near Pine Ridge. Most were full, adoption fees high. Then she found Haven's Rest, specializing in special needs animals. Second chances for the forgotten. She clicked through to the website and froze. Shadow, 4 years old. Critical condition. The photo, a large black and tan German shepherd lying in a cage, eyes hollow and distant. The description tightened her chest. Severe injuries, needs a miracle. Scheduled for humane euthanasia December 31st if no improvement. 3 weeks away. Miracle. She didn't believe in them anymore. But maybe miracles were meant for those who had stopped. She saved the screenshot and began planning. 2 days later, on a bitter December morning, Emma waited until Sarah's car disappeared toward the hospital, then wheeled herself to the phone. Tyler Henderson, 16, from down the street, answered on the 4th ring. "I need a favor," she said. "Push me at 2 miles. $20, her birthday money from last year." Tyler hesitated but agreed. 40 minutes later, Emma arrived at Haven's Rest, hands blistered, body jarring with every bump on cracked roads and icy gravel. At the gate, Tyler asked, "Want me to wait?" "No," Emma said. "I'll call when I'm ready." Inside, warmth hit her immediately. Wood smoke, dog food, life. Photos lined the walls. Animals, families, second chances. "Be right there," a voice called. Emma clutched Shadow's photo like a talisman. Maggie Foster appeared. Silver hair, kind eyes, weathered hands. "Well, hello there, sweetheart." You looking for someone? I want to adopt Shadow, Emma said, her words raw, unpracticed. Maggie's expression softened, curiosity and sadness flickering across her face. That's a big request, honey. What's your name? Emma Miller. Shadow's in bad shape, Maggie warned. He might not make it. I want to see him, Emma whispered. Maggie hesitated, then gently guided Emma down a gravel path to the isolation ward where the sickest animals were kept. Shadow lay in a cage at the far end, ribs showing, broken leg in a cast, eyes vacant and distant. Emma's breath caught. She knew that look. It mirrored her own reflection in the years following the accident. He's unpredictable, dangerous, in pain, Nathan warned from outside. Emma ignored him. She knew what shutdown looked like, felt like, and now, sitting just feet away from Shadow, she hoped against hope that something inside him was still waiting. For her, I had a dream last night, Emma whispered. Her gaze fixed on nothing in particular, but Shadow's ears twitched, catching the faintest sound of her voice. I was running, just running through a field, my legs. They worked, the sun was warm, and I felt free. Her voice faltered, trailing into silence. Then I woke up and I couldn't move anything below my waist. Shadow's small tentative movement, the twitch of an ear, made her pause, hope stirring like a fragile ember. People, they don't know what to say to me, she continued, voice barely audible. They're afraid they'll say the wrong thing, so they say nothing at all. Or they say too much, how brave I am. How inspiring, her words cracked. Like being paralyzed makes me some kind of saint. I'm not brave. I'm just stuck. The room was quiet, heavy with the weight of unspoken pain. Emma's hands shook in her lap. My mom told me my dad left after the accident. Said he couldn't handle having a broken daughter. That's what I am. Broken. Tears traced paths down her cheeks. All the therapy, all the exercises, none of it can fix what's wrong with me. Sometimes I think, maybe he was right to leave. Maybe everyone would be better off if I just stopped. Her voice faded. Emma's next words came barely above a whisper. They're going to put you down in 3 weeks because you've given up, because you think there's nothing left worth fighting for. Maybe we're both too broken to fix. Her hand reached toward Shadow, quivering, stopping just short of him. But we're the same. You and me, both left behind. And maybe that means we don't have to be alone. For the first time, Shadow's gaze met hers. Emma gasped softly. Nathan Cole whispered, "Holy hell." Shadow's front legs twitched, then moved deliberately. Soft whimper escaped him as he shifted his weight forward, back legs scraping painfully against the floor. He's trying to stand, Maggie whispered. Nathan's eyes widened. I see it. He's trying. It took 2 long, agonizing minutes for Shadow to inch forward 3 feet. Each movement was a battle, muscles quivering, whines escaping, ribs straining under his dull coat, but he did not stop. Inch by painful inch, he crawled toward her. Emma held perfectly still, tears streaming freely, refusing to breathe for fear of disturbing the fragile miracle in motion. Finally, Shadow reached her. With immense effort, he lifted his head onto her lap. His weight was real, warm and alive. His dark eyes, no longer hollow, found hers. Slowly, carefully, he licked her tears. Then he exhaled, a shuddering breath, and finally settled against her legs, his body relaxing for the first time in weeks. I've got you, Emma whispered. I've got you. Silence stretched between them. Maggie's weathered face glistened with tears. Nathan remained frozen, unable to reconcile what he had just witnessed. That's not medically possible, he muttered. He hasn't moved in 3 weeks. The pain alone, some things, Maggie said softly, don't need a medical explanation. Emma's hands rested on Shadow's head, feeling his steady heartbeat. They both trembled, both crying in their own ways. The door burst open. Sarah Miller appeared, eyes wide, breathless. Emma, Tyler called me. What in God's name? Her words stopped as she took in the scene, her daughter cradling a broken dog. Maggie and Nathan watching silently. This is Shadow, Emma said, voice thick with emotion. I want to adopt him. Sarah's instinct was to say no, to list all the impossible reasons. But Emma's gaze, fierce and unwavering, made the words die on her lips. For the first time in 3 years, Sarah saw her daughter as anything other than defeated. Can we talk outside? Maggie asked. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Who are you? Someone who understands more than you think. Just 5 minutes. In the hallway, voices rose and fell. Emma couldn't hear specifics, only the tone. Conflict, then quiet understanding. When they returned, Sarah's face was pale. He can stay on medical hold, Maggie announced. 2 weeks to decide on adoption. We'll cover his medical costs. Nathan's jaw tightened. Maggie, we can't afford. I'll handle it, Sarah said firmly. I don't accept charity. It's not charity, Maggie replied. It's time. Time for Emma to decide, time for Shadow to fight. Everyone deserves time. Sarah finally nodded. 2 weeks. Then we talk about reality. Emma barely heard them. She was focused on Shadow, sleeping peacefully against her for the first time since the highway. Shadow had chosen to live, and maybe, just maybe, so had she. Surgery was scheduled for December 12th. Nathan prepared the operating room at dawn. Precise and tense. 4 hours of careful work lay ahead. Any misstep could shatter Shadow's fragile chance. Emma insisted on being there. Sarah tried to object, but Maggie's quiet firmness ended the discussion. At 6 in the morning, Emma sat beside Shadow's cage, hand resting on the bars. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "I'll be here when you wake up. I promise." Shadow's gaze held hers until anesthesia pulled him under. His last conscious act, a gentle shift of his paw toward her hand. The surgery revealed horrors Nathan hadn't anticipated. Multiple old fractures, poorly healed, scar tissue from repeated trauma. Nerve damage inconsistent with a car accident. "This wasn't impact damage," Nathan muttered to his assistant Maria. "These are defensive wounds." "You mean someone?" Maria asked. "Yes," Nathan said through clenched teeth. He had seen this pattern before in dogs from a particular K9 unit. Hands trembling, he completed the surgery. Shadow was moved to recovery, and Nathan pored over intake records. Riverside K9 unit, retired 6 months prior, officially for performance issues. He called a former colleague. The conversation deepened the darkness. The injuries didn't match the story. Pattern repeated. Danger hidden in plain sight. 2 days post-surgery, infection struck. Shadow's temperature soared to 104 dig. His immune system struggled. Emma refused to leave his side. Each day she came from the hospital with Sarah, sitting beside him, reading aloud from library books about German shepherds, veterinary care, anything to comfort him. December 16th. Nathan found Emma asleep on the floor, hand through the bars resting on Shadow's side, rising and falling with each breath. "Kids got more determination than sense," Nathan muttered. Maggie smiled quietly. "Runs in the family." Shadow's crisis passed. Physical therapy began December 17th, but the dog refused to cooperate, laying still, staring at nothing, as if giving up again. "Maybe we pushed too soon," Nathan said. "Wait," Emma said, wheelchair at the edge of the mat. "Let me try." With immense effort, she moved to the floor, leg braces on, and began her exercises. Shadow watched then. As she shifted and strained, he struggled to his feet. Legs trembling, cast scraping the floor. He limped toward her, settling beside her, head resting on her back. They lay there together, exhausted, broken, yet refusing to quit. "I'll be damned," Nathan whispered. From that day, their therapy became a partnership. One refused to quit, so the other didn't either. Even as nightmares haunted Emma, the bond with Shadow gave her strength. Through pain, fear, and the darkest truths, they fought together, each keeping the other alive. That same day, the man in a police uniform arrived at Haven's Rest. Emma was inside with Shadow when she heard raised voices echoing from the main building. Curious, she wheeled herself closer, staying hidden in the shadows. "I'm Officer Frank Johnson from the Riverside K9 unit," a deep, authoritative voice said, sharp enough to make Emma's skin prickle. "I'm following up on our former K9 dogs. We've had reports that one might have ended up in your facility. Why the interest?" Maggie's voice was cool, guarded. "That dog is police property. The microchip is still registered to our unit. We're evaluating whether to reclaim him." "Reclaim him?" Johnson's tone cut through the room. "He was released from service 6 months ago. Left for dead on the highway. Failed performance standards, aggressive, unreliable. If he's here, I need to see him. Public safety concerns." Maggie's sarcasm was sharp as a blade. "I'm sure you do." Emma heard footsteps approaching. Then Dr. Nathan's voice, tight with barely controlled anger. "Frank, I should have known you'd show up. D. Cole still holding grudges. You shouldn't be allowed near any animal, let alone making demands here. And with your history, you shouldn't even be practicing veterinary medicine. But here we are." The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Emma wheeled closer, peering through the doorway. She caught a glimpse of the officer, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that might have been handsome, if not for the coldness in his eyes. After Frank left, Nathan and Maggie spoke in low, urgent tones. "He's going to try to take Shadow," Nathan said. "The microchip proves ownership. Legally, he has a case over my dead body." "Maggie, Frank was investigated 2 years ago for K9 abuse. My wife, Jennifer, was the investigating officer. The case was dismissed, yes, but we both know the truth. Department politics, union pressure. Frank has been vindictive ever since. This isn't about Shadow. It's about power." Maggie's eyes were steel. "Some fights are worth having, even if you lose." 3 days later, the local newspaper ran a story. 8-year-old girl fights to save injured police dog. The community's response was immediate and divided. Donations trickled in. $5 here, $20 there, but online comments were cruel. People questioned why a paralyzed child was trying to control an 85-pound German shepherd. Others argued poor families shouldn't have pets they couldn't afford, and some suggested dangerous dogs should be euthanized. Emma read every word. Each cruel comment cut deeper than the last. On Christmas Eve, A volunteer accidentally left a folder on Maggie's desk. It was labeled Sarah Foster Miller and contained clippings, distant photos, and school records. When Sarah arrived that evening to pick up Emma, she froze. "How long have you been watching us?" Her voice shook, rage and fear warring in every syllable. "Since I saw the accident report 3 years ago," Maggie said calmly. "You had no right. I had every right. She's my granddaughter." Sarah's words hung like ice in the cold air, then dropped to a whisper. Don't you dare. I'm your mother, Sarah. That little girl is my family. You can hate me for the rest of your life, but it doesn't change the truth. You used my daughter to manipulate me. You used a dying dog. I gave that dog a reason to live, and I gave your daughter hope. If that's manipulation, then yes, I'm guilty. But I won't apologize for it." Without another word, Sarah grabbed Emma and left. In the car, Emma asked what was wrong, but her mother couldn't answer, just drove with tears streaming down her face. "We're not going back there," she said. "What, Mom?" "No, Shadow needs me." "No, Emma, we're done with that place." For the next 2 days, Emma was forbidden from seeing Shadow. Calls to the shelter went unanswered. Maggie's reply was always the same. "Your mother made her wishes clear." Without Emma's presence, Shadow deteriorated. He stopped eating. He ignored therapy. The light in his eyes dimmed. On December 28th, Dr. Nathan called Sarah at the hospital. "That dog is dying without her. Whatever is happening between you and Maggie, don't punish Emma. And don't punish Shadow." Sarah hung up silently, but that night she saw the truth she'd been denying. Emma wasn't fighting for a dog. She was fighting for the first thing in 3 years that made her want to wake up in the morning. And Sarah, in her desperate attempt to protect her daughter, was taking that away. On December 30th, the Pine Ridge Courthouse was packed beyond capacity. Built in 1952, its dark wood and soaring ceilings made every sound echo. People stood in aisles and spilled into the hallway. Judge Martha Crawford, 63, notorious for no-nonsense rulings, looked at the crowd with a raised eyebrow. "This is a civil hearing about animal custody, not a murder trial. Everyone without direct involvement, out." "Nobody moved," she sighed. "Fine. But one outburst and you're gone." Frank Johnson sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, suits sharp and polished. Sarah sat alone at the defense table, papers trembling in her hands. Emma, pale and silent, remained beside her mother. Shadow wasn't allowed inside. Maggie and Nathan sat in the gallery, their expressions taut with tension. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Crawford." The hearing began. Frank's lawyer was smooth, professional, devastating. He presented the microchip documentation first, proof that Shadow was registered to the Riverside Police Department K-9 unit. Then came the incident reports. "Your Honor, this animal has a documented history of aggression," he said. "On March 15th, Shadow attacked his handler during routine training, causing significant injury." He held up photos of Frank's arm. Deep bite marks visible. Emma gripped her wheelchair armrests, her knuckles white. The dog was deemed unfit for service and released. "We maintain he poses a public safety risk, particularly with someone physically unable to control him." The lawyer gestured toward Emma. "The defendant is an 8-year-old child with paralysis. She cannot physically restrain or manage an 85-pound German Shepherd with known aggressive tendencies." Sarah stood, voice trembling. "Shadow isn't aggressive. He's been gentle with my daughter since the day they met. He's recovering from terrible injuries allegedly sustained when struck by a vehicle. That's unproven," the lawyer cut in. "For all we know, he was hurt in another violent incident. Do you have veterinary training?" "No," Sarah admitted. "Professional dog handling experience?" "No." "Can you afford ongoing medical care for this animal?" Sarah's silence was damning. "Your Honor, the defendant works 2 jobs, cares for a disabled child, and received an eviction notice earlier this month. She cannot provide proper care for a high-needs animal." Judge Crawford's gaze softened as she asked, "Is that true? You're facing eviction?" "Yes, Your Honor," Sarah whispered. "And how do you plan to care for this dog?" "We'll find a way. Emma loves him. He's helped her more than any therapy." The lawyer smiled, sensing victory. "Love doesn't pay veterinary bills, Ms. Miller. We request immediate transfer of custody. Shadow should be returned to the K-9 unit for evaluation and potential rehabilitation, or humane euthanasia if necessary." Emma let out a sound, not a word, more like a wounded animal. Sarah grabbed her hand. "Your Honor, may my daughter speak?" The judge studied Emma for a long moment. "All right, keep it brief." Someone in the gallery helped lift Emma's wheelchair to the witness stand. "She looked impossibly small. Shadow was dying when I met him," Emma said quietly. "Everyone said he'd given up, but he hadn't. He was just waiting. Waiting for someone who understood." "Understood what, sweetheart?" the judge asked gently. "What it feels like to be broken," Emma whispered. "What it feels like when everyone looks at you and sees only what's wrong, but never what's good. Officer Johnson says Shadow is aggressive. she continued, voice stronger. I've spent hours with him. He's never hurt me. The only time he growls is when he's in pain. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge leaned forward. I understand plenty, Emma said. Shadow protected me when I fell during therapy. He stayed with me when I cried, and everyone else was too scared to comfort me. He's fighting to live because I gave him a reason to. Has the dog ever shown aggression toward you? The lawyer asked. He's shown pain, fear, loyalty, but never aggression. We trust each other, Frank whispered to his lawyer. They produced photos of Emma lying beside Shadow during therapy, Your Honor. These images show the child in vulnerable positions with an unpredictable animal. If he were to snap, he won't, Emma said firmly. You can't guarantee anything. Not the sun rising, not your car reaching home safely, but I know Shadow and he knows me. The courtroom was silent. Even Nathan's jaw slackened. Your Honor, may I speak? Nathan finally said from the gallery. This is highly irregular, but I am Shadow's treating veterinarian. Judge Crawford nodded. Nathan stepped forward, hands trembling, opening a file. Officer Johnson claimed Shadow was injured by a vehicle. That's false. These injuries show repeated blunt force trauma. Multiple old fractures healed improperly. Scar tissue, nerve damage. This is systematic abuse. The courtroom erupted. Frank shot to his feet. That's a lie. Medical fact, Nathan's voice steadied. I've seen this pattern before. Other Riverside canine dogs. My wife, Officer Jennifer Cole, investigated Johnson 2 years ago. Case dismissed, but evidence doesn't lie. These are photographs, veterinary records, hidden camera footage documenting abuse. I kept them for 2 years, waiting for a reason to use them. Why not sooner? The judge asked. Nathan's voice broke. My wife died in a car accident the week she planned to go public. I was a coward. I let fear silence me. But I won't let this man hurt another dog. Not while that little girl is fighting to save one. Frank's face flushed red. You can't prove anything. Those records are inadmissible. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as Judge Crawford carefully reviewed Dr. Nathan's documents. This is a civil hearing, not a criminal trial, she said, her voice steady. I can consider any evidence I deem relevant. She held out her hand. I'll review this. The lawyer opened his mouth to object, but the damage was done. Emma watched Officer Johnson's face tighten, veins of barely controlled anger flickering across his jaw. After 10 tense minutes, the judge looked up, her expression grave. Based on the evidence presented, I am ordering a full investigation into the Riverside K-9 Unit's treatment of service animals. As for immediate custody, Shadow will remain at Haven's Rest Animal Sanctuary, pending further review. Neither party is awarded custody at this time. We reconvene January 15th. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a defeat either. As they filed out, Frank Johnson stepped into Sarah's path in the hallway. Emma wheeled ahead, Maggie shadowing silently. You think you won today? Frank's voice was low, dangerous. You'll lose everything? The dog, your home, your daughter? Are you threatening me? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. I'm stating facts. You have no money, no home, no stability. Social services would be very interested in your situation. Sarah froze, but before fear could root her to the spot, Maggie appeared between them. You're done bullying people, she said quietly, her gaze unflinching. Back away from my daughter. Frank's eyes narrowed. Your daughter. That's right. And I have $85,000 to fund a legal defense, connections to animal rights organizations, and nothing to lose. So ask yourself, Officer Johnson, do you really want this fight? He studied her for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Sarah exhaled shakily. Don't call me that, she whispered. It's what you are, Maggie replied quietly. That night, December 31st at 9 p.m., Nathan called. His voice was tight with urgency. Shadows crashing, body temperature dropping, heart rate erratic. He's been declining since Emma stopped visiting. I think his body is giving up. What are you saying? Sarah whispered. If Emma wants to see him alive, it has to be tonight. I give him hours, not days. Sarah's eyes fell to Emma's closed bedroom door. Her daughter had been quiet all evening, untouched by dinner, lost in thought. She opened the door at 10:15. Emma sat in her wheelchair, staring at nothing. Shadow's dying, Sarah said bluntly. No point sugarcoating it. Dr. Cole says we have until midnight to decide whether to let him go peacefully. Emma's expression didn't change. I want to see him, Sarah pleaded. Please. Emma nodded once. Then let's go. They arrived at Haven's Rest at 11. Maggie met them at the door, face grave. Isolation ward. He's in the isolation ward. Inside, the room was dim, warmer than usual. A space heater hummed softly. Shadow lay on a blanket in his open cage, breathing shallowly. A heart monitor beeped slowly. Nathan stood by the back wall, syringe ready. Pentobarbital glinting faintly in the sterile light. Emma wheeled herself to the cage and transferred to the floor. Crawling toward Shadow despite her useless legs, she collapsed beside him. His eyes were half closed, unseeing. 7:47 p.m., her hand pressed to his chest. The weak, irregular heartbeat trembled beneath her palm. I found something, she whispered. A newspaper article about my dad. Shadow's ear twitched. He didn't leave us. He died saving us. Mom lied because she thought I couldn't handle the truth. I was angry, but he was a hero. Tears fell onto Shadow's fur. I won't give up on you. We're family now. Family stays. The clock ticked 11:54. Nathan stepped forward. Emma, honey, it's time. We have to let him go. No, she whispered fiercely. He's in pain, please. Just one more minute. Nathan looked at Maggie, who nodded silently. The room fell into tense silence. The heart monitor's slow rhythm filled the space. 56 p.m. Emma leaned close to Shadow. Please don't leave me. I know you're tired, but fight one more time. Just one more, nothing. 58 p.m. Nathan raised the syringe. I'm sorry. I can't let him suffer. Emma's hand pressed harder to his chest. Shadow, please. 1:59 p.m. The monitor flatlined. Emma screamed. But then, 10:15 later, a blip. Shadow's eyes opened. Slowly, with immense effort, he found Emma's face. Inch by agonizing inch, he dragged himself to her. 90 seconds to move 6 inches. The monitor steadied. Shadow placed his head in Emma's lap, licked her tears, and sighed a deep, shuddering exhale. He was alive. The clock struck midnight. January 1st, a new year. Emma sobbed, holding him, her hands buried in his fur. Maggie wiped her eyes. Sarah watched silently, hand over her mouth. He chose life, Maggie whispered. He chose her. For 10 minutes, no one moved. Two broken souls refusing to let go. Finally, Nathan knelt beside Emma. You can stay with him tonight. I'll bring blankets. Emma curled beside Shadow on the mat, warmth at last. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't have nightmares. She dreamed of running through fields, Shadow at her side, and a man watching them, smiling. She knew he was proud. He had never really left January 2nd. The sheriff arrived at their rental house, final eviction notice in hand. 12 cardboard boxes held the sum of 3 years of life rebuilt after tragedy. Where will we go? Emma asked. I don't know yet, Sarah whispered, overwhelmed by options that didn't exist. Emma began choosing what to keep. Stuffed animals, art projects, books, a framed photo of her father, Michael, smiling, holding baby Emma. I'm sorry, Daddy, she whispered. That evening, Maggie appeared at their door. Guest house, 3 bedrooms, been empty 15 years. You can live there, work full-time at the shelter. Real job, real pay, not charity. Sarah's pride warred with reality. Why? Because I failed you once. I won't fail, Emma. Emma's hopeful gaze sealed the deal. It's business, Sarah said finally. We pay rent, we work. That's it. No family talk. They moved in January. The guest house, 50 yards from the main farmhouse, had a bedroom overlooking the barn. Emma fell asleep easily, Shadow nearby. 2 days later, unpacking, Emma discovered an old, dusty photo album labeled Sarah Childhood. Page after page revealed a young Sarah with a woman who looked like Maggie. Birthday cards tucked between photos spelled it out. Maggie was Sarah's mother. That night, Emma confronted Sarah. Is Maggie your mom? Yes, Sarah admitted, pale, defeated. Why didn't you tell me? Everything is complicated, Sarah whispered. I was trying to protect you. I thought lying would spare you pain. I was wrong. Emma's hands shook as she held the album. I don't know who you are anymore. She wheeled out, leaving Sarah alone with 15 years of mistakes. January 7th. Frank Johnson appeared at Haven's Rest again. Plain clothes this time. He parked openly, watching. He followed Sarah to work. He lingered at therapy sessions. Whispers in town spread. Rumors twisted into weaponized lies. January 9th. Frank showed up at the shelter gate while Emma visited Shadow. Shadow growled, primal and protective, standing between Emma and danger. Maggie blocked the gate. There's a difference, Maggie said quietly. Tell that to the judge. Emergency motion filed. January 12th, the hearing moved up. Shadow trembled in the barn, unsettled by Frank's intrusion. Emma held him close, whispering, At least you still love me. You're the only one who doesn't lie. Inside, Sarah and Maggie strategized. Frank had money, influence, power. They had love. Evidence and determination. Sometimes the fight matters more than the outcome, Maggie said. Sarah looked at Emma and Shadow, both refusing to give up. I've spent 3 years protecting Emma, she admitted quietly. But really, I've been protecting myself. From mistakes, from help, from truth. Maggie reached across the table. Sarah, after a long pause, Sarah took her mother's hand. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. For all of it, Maggie replied. It was a start. One moment of truth after years of lies. Outside, the world went on, but inside, a family began to heal. Emma slept against Shadow, both of them exhausted from battles no child or dog should ever have to face. The steady beat of his heart was the only sound that mattered, a rhythm of comfort in the quiet cottage. Dr. Nathan Cole hadn't slept in 3 days. Since the hearing was moved to January 12th, he had worked obsessively, gathering evidence he should have compiled years ago. On the morning of January 11th, he arrived at Haven's Rest with 2 overflowing file boxes, determination blazing in his eyes. "I have what we need," he told Maggie and Sarah, spreading the contents across the kitchen table. Photographs of injured dogs mirroring Shadow's trauma, veterinary reports detailing repeated abuse, witness statements from handlers too afraid to speak, and hidden camera footage of Frank Johnson violently disciplining animals during training sessions. "Jennifer spent 6 months building this case," Nathan said, voice rough with emotion. "She was going to go public the week after she died. Official reports blamed black ice, but the weather was clear that day." "You think it wasn't an accident?" Sarah asked softly. Nathan's hands trembled as he rifled through the meticulous documentation. "I suspect, yes, Jennifer was a threat to him. I can't prove it, but I've long feared the worst. I kept these files hidden in my attic for 2 years," he admitted, "afraid of what might happen if I came forward, afraid I'd lose everything like she did, watching Emma fight for Shadow. It showed me what courage looks like. That little girl would risk everything to save someone she loves. The least I can do is honor Jennifer's work." Sarah reached out, squeezing his hand. "Jennifer would be proud." Nathan's phone rang nonstop as he contacted K-9 units across Montana and neighboring states. The evidence painted a grim pattern. 8 dogs released early from the Riverside unit under Frank Johnson, each suffering similar injuries. 3 had died within months of retirement. 2 languished in shelters, broken beyond repair. Then he reached Officer Lisa Chen, a former K-9 handler who had witnessed Frank's abuse, but had been silenced by department politics. When Nathan explained Emma and Shadow's story, something inside her shifted. "I'll testify," she said. "I should have spoken up years ago. I won't be silent anymore." By that afternoon, the story went viral. A local news segment on the hearing was picked up by national animal rights organizations. Social media erupted. Donations poured in. $5 from a single mother in Ohio, $20 from a veteran in Texas, $50 from a teacher in California. By midnight, the fundraiser had raised $23,000, enough to cover Shadow's medical bills, Sarah's debts, and upcoming legal fees. On January 11th, 200 people gathered at Pine Ridge Town Hall for an impromptu rally. Parents brought children. Veterans spoke of the bond between handlers and service dogs. A veterinary ethics professor drove 3 hours to testify. Tyler Henderson, the teenager who had first helped Emma reach Shadow, stood and recounted her determination. She wheeled herself 2 miles in December cold because she believed that dog deserved a chance. That's love. Petitions amassed 3,147 signatures demanding Frank's investigation and Shadow's right to stay with Emma. Then Officer Lisa Chen stepped forward in uniform. Silence fell. "My name is Officer Lisa Chen," she said, voice steady despite its tremor. "I am filing a formal complaint against Officer Frank Johnson for systematic animal abuse. I witnessed it. I documented it. I reported it. Department politics protected him, but I won't anymore." The crowd erupted in applause. That night, Lisa submitted her documentation to the district attorney. Back at the farmhouse, Maggie and Sarah sat quietly in the kitchen. Emma slept in the cottage, exhausted but safe. For the first time in 15 years, mother and daughter were together without anger between them. "I need to tell you why I was so against Michael," Maggie said softly, sharing the story she had carried for decades. Her husband, Emma's grandfather, had been a functional alcoholic, one night killing a young mother in a head-on collision. Maggie had blamed herself for not leaving sooner. When Sarah brought Michael home, Maggie had panicked, seeing history repeating, but now she saw the truth. Michael had made one mistake long ago. He was nothing like her father. "I should have explained my fear," Maggie said, tears in her eyes. "Instead, I gave ultimatums and lost you. And when Emma was born, I was too proud to reach out, opening the shelter near you. It was my way of making up for it." Sarah reached across the table, taking her mother's hands. "You didn't fail me. We failed each other, but Mom, it's time to stop wasting time. Emma deserves to know she has family. She deserves to know family fights for each other." Outside, snow fell softly, covering old wounds with something clean and new. In her dream that night, Emma saw her father smiling beside a woman with silver hair and kind eyes. Shadow ran at her side. Together they were a family, and for the first time, it felt whole. January 12th. The courtroom overflowed with 300 supporters, media cameras, and the weight of a community's hope. Frank Johnson arrived alone. His police union lawyer had resigned overnight. Fellow officers kept their distance. Judge Crawford reviewed the evidence meticulously. Dr. Nathan's files, Officer Chen's complaint, Shadow's medical records, damning footage, and 847 letters from community members. Her ruling was swift. "Officer Johnson, you are hereby charged with animal cruelty. Your badge is suspended pending criminal investigation." Shadow's ownership is transferred to Haven's Rest Animal Sanctuary. Emma Miller's adoption application is approved, pending standard home study. You are ordered to have no contact with the Miller family or the animal in question. The courtroom erupted in cheers. 6 months later, Montana's summer warmed the hills. Emma walked independently, using braces and a cane. Shadow, certified as her service dog, stayed within 10 feet at all times. Sarah and Maggie worked side by side at the shelter, rebuilding their bond. Emma called her grandmother Grandma Maggie, and the older woman's eyes shone with joy. Frank Johnson was convicted, sentenced to 2 years, barred from owning animals for life. On a golden evening, Emma ran, clumsy, joyful, through the shelter field. Shadow matched her pace perfectly. Who rescued who? Maggie asked softly. Does it matter? Sarah smiled. Sometimes the most broken things make the most beautiful families. Emma and Sarah's journey reminds us that family isn't defined by perfection, but by courage. Courage to forgive, to try again, to fight for each other. It's about second chances, about how the fragments of our past, stitched with honesty and love, can create something stronger than we ever imagined. What relationship in your life needs that first brave step toward healing? Have you ever discovered that someone you thought abandoned you was actually fighting for you in ways you couldn't see? Share your story. Your words might be the lifeline someone needs today.